So yeah, I'm Liz Moore. So I'm a registrar in gynecology, and I'm training to be a consultant surgeon in gynecological cancers. As you've just heard, so I've just finished 3 years of research and a PhD at the University of Cambridge that was, I'm being told to hold a microphone, that was funded by Target Ovarian Cancer. So I've been focusing on trying to develop new tests that might enable earlier diagnosis of ovarian cancer. So this afternoon I've been asked to talk about accurate and timely diagnosis of ovarian cancer. So over the next 15 minutes or so, I'm going to talk about the current guidelines for the diagnosis of ovarian cancer within the NHS. I then want to discuss with you some of the challenges that we face improving the diagnosis of ovarian cancer. And then I will go on to give you a couple of examples of current research, including my own research, that's being undertaken in the field of ovarian cancer diagnosis. So I'm sure many of you will be familiar with the recommended pathway for the diagnosis of ovarian cancer currently within the NHS. But I just wanted to summarise this for you. So to start with, women who are seen by their GP with symptoms suggestive of ovarian cancer should go on to have a CA125 blood test. I'm going to come back later in the talk to discuss the symptoms and also CA125 in more detail and how these contribute to the challenges that we face in earlier diagnosis of ovarian cancer. So women who have a raised CA125, the recommendation is that they go on and have an ultrasound scan. The information from the ultrasound scan should be used in combination with the CA125 blood test result and also the menopausal status to calculate a risk of malignancy index. So women with a high risk of malignancy index have a high likelihood of having ovarian cancer. Women with a low risk of malignancy index, this indicates unlikely ovarian cancer, but that is not black and white. The risk of malignancy index is therefore used to guide subsequent referrals and further investigations if needed. So women who have a high risk of malignancy index, where we have a high suspicion of ovarian cancer, are referred to see a specialist gynecological oncologist for further imaging and then discussions about treatment. So as I'm sure many of you are aware, and as we've already discussed, this process can be lengthy, with some women experiencing long periods of time between presenting to their GP with symptoms that suggest ovarian cancer and being seen by a specialist gynecological oncologist. Also, actually, not all women are diagnosed following this referral pathway. In fact, it's only about a third of women with ovarian cancer in the UK that are currently diagnosed following a referral from a GP. So if we think about the stage of ovarian cancer at the time of diagnosis, so what I'm showing here is data from 2014, but actually the data for 2016 looked fairly similar. And as we've already mentioned, most women have stage 3 or 4 ovarian cancer at the time they're diagnosed. And I'm sure you're all aware that what this means, that the cancer has spread from the pelvis to the abdomen, or in the case of stage 4 disease, to other organs. So for example, the liver or the lungs. Stage 1 ovarian cancer is when there's been no spread and the cancer remains within the ovaries. So women who have stage 1 ovarian cancer at the time of diagnosis have a much higher chance of long-term survival. So it's therefore incredibly important that we improve the diagnosis of ovarian cancer so that more women are diagnosed at an early stage before the cancer has spread. I now want to move on to discuss some of the challenges that we face in diagnosing ovarian cancer earlier. So we've already mentioned this, ovarian cancer is more than one disease. So what I'm showing here are the 4 main subtypes of ovarian cancer. Now, they're all thought to originate in different parts of the body and develop and spread through different mechanisms. So actually developing a test that can accurately identify all of these subtypes of ovarian cancer is therefore quite challenging. So just as one example, and we've already discussed this, high-grade serous ovarian cancer, which is the most common subtype of ovarian cancer, is actually thought to originate in the fallopian tube. So spread of high-grade serous ovarian cancer within the abdomen is very common at the time of diagnosis. We particularly see spread to the omentum, which is the sheet of fatty tissue that hangs down from the stomach. And a likely reason for this is because the fallopian tube is in direct communication with the pelvis and the abdomen. So cells can shed from the fallopian tube and circulate around in the pelvis and the abdomen, leading to deposits of cancer at different sites. So again, we've already touched on this, but another challenge is that the symptoms of ovarian cancer are non-specific. So ovarian cancer does have symptoms, and they include diarrhea, constipation, feeling tired, unexplained weight loss, amongst others. Now, importantly, these symptoms tend to be frequent, persistent, and new for that individual. Now, the challenge for GPs, and again, we've already touched on this, is that 1 in 2 women aged between 50 to 70 present to their GP each year with these symptoms, and very few of these women will actually have ovarian cancer. So again, something else we've already touched on is CA125. So CA125, as we've already mentioned, is not elevated in all ovarian cancers, and specifically it's not raised in half of women who have early stage ovarian cancer. So this can result in missed or delayed diagnoses. The other challenge is that it is raised in a huge number of conditions that are not ovarian cancer. I've listed some here. This is just to show the extent of conditions that can have a raised CA125. So for example, benign ovarian cysts, fibroids, and CA125 can even be raised with normal menstruation. So now moving on to what is being done to try and improve the diagnosis of ovarian cancer. So Anwen's already mentioned this about symptom awareness, and this is obviously incredibly important. So Target Ovarian Cancer have been doing a lot of work to improve awareness amongst GPs, and the online training modules have already been mentioned. And I think, Anwen, you said it's 48% of GPs that have now completed an online training module. Improving symptom awareness amongst the general population, as a comment that was made earlier, is also incredibly important and has been a focus of Target Ovarian Cancer. So as you can see, awareness across the country is very variable and is low. The highest percentage of women confident in spotting the symptoms of ovarian cancer being at 25%. So Target Ovarian Cancer have developed symptoms leaflets, online animations to try and improve the awareness of symptoms. And hopefully what this means is that if women are aware of the symptoms, they will present to their GP earlier, and we have a better chance of diagnosing ovarian cancer at an earlier stage. So now moving on to talk about 2 areas of research that are currently ongoing in the field of ovarian cancer diagnosis. So the first is the rocket study. So this is a research study that's been led by Sudha Sundar from the University of Birmingham. So ROCKET stands for Refining Ovarian Cancer Test Accuracy Scores. And the aim of this study is to validate new tests in women who have symptoms of suspected ovarian cancer. Okay, so there are 4 phases to this study. The first is a review of the current literature to identify the best tests that are currently available. The second phase is then to apply these tests to existing sample cohorts. For example, those that were collected through UK CTOX, which was mentioned earlier, being the large ovarian cancer screening trial that was led by UCL. The third phase of ROCKETS is a prospective study to collect new samples in order to validate the tests that have been identified. And finally, the fourth phase is to analyse all of this information and hopefully refine the current National Institute for Clinical Excellence guidelines relating to the investigation and referral of women with suspected ovarian cancer. In terms of the prospective study, ROCKETS is recruiting both pre- and postmenopausal women who have been referred with symptoms suggestive of ovarian cancer. These women, in order to be eligible, need to have either a raised CA125 or an abnormal ultrasound scan. So they're performing extra blood tests to look at new markers to compare to CA125, and they're also performing ultrasound scans with specific guidelines about the interpretation and reporting of the scans. And recruitment to this study is still ongoing. So now moving on to talk about the work that I've been doing over the last 3 years. So I have been focused on trying to detect tumour DNA in blood tests. So all cells in the body can release free DNA into the circulation. In individuals with cancer, this includes release of free DNA from tumour cells. And this is what I will refer to as circulating tumour DNA. So it's this circulating tumour DNA that I've been developing and refining methods to detect in blood samples that have been collected from women with newly diagnosed ovarian cancer. So the challenge we have in detecting circulating tumour DNA is the large amount of free DNA in the circulation that's been released from normal cells. So even in individuals with advanced cancers or recurrent cancers, the majority of free DNA will have been released from normal cells. So in individuals with early stage cancers, the amount of tumour DNA in the blood, in the circulation, is so low that new methods have needed to be developed to accurately identify the tumour DNA from the huge amount of normal DNA that's found in the blood samples. So the work I've been involved in has shown that we can detect circulating tumour DNA in some women with newly diagnosed ovarian cancer. And what we're now looking to do is to work with the ROCKETS study team to combine the tests that have been identified in ROCKETS with circulating tumour DNA so that we can try and further improve the detection of earlier stage ovarian cancer. Thank you very much.